Welcome to the Geek Saga Podcast series Hot D Takes, covering HBO's House of the Dragon episode by episode. Hi, I'm Tara Lynn of Geek Saga Entertainment, and welcome to Hot D Takes. This podcast series covers HBO's House of the Dragon episode by episode with myself, an avid reader of all things ASOIAF, and my friend Manny, a Game of Thrones fan who is Unsullied, aka has never read the books, being your stalwart hosts. So first things first, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at A Geek Saga.
And I'm Manny, the aforementioned Sullied co-host, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Manissimo Art, because I'm getting better now. Thanks for joining us for our fifth episode, which will cover episode 5 of House of the Dragon, We Light the Way.
As a reminder, expect spoilers from the episode we're covering, but less obvious, there will be very minimal book spoilers from Fire and Blood, which is, of course, the source material for House of the Dragon. We'll start with an episode summary, then cover what we think are the main hot takes from the episode, and conclude with an episode-specific favorites roundup.
We also have a rating system that we will, like true Targaryens, fill in when and where we please, and that system includes rating things on a scale of 1 to 10 Targ eyebrows.
Last but not least, each week we're joined by a special guest. This week it's Meghan Dee, a fellow ASOIAF lover and costume aficionado. Meghan, where can everyone find you on social media?
Hi there. You can find me as birdied.costuming on Instagram, birdiedcause on Twitter, or really just search Birdie D plus some form of costuming and I'm probably there.
And it's Birdie D, BIRDIEDEE, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we're super excited to have you join us. Now, just one last piece of business before we dig in. Don't forget that Geek Saga Entertainment now has a Patreon with 10 tiers ranging from $1 a month to $40 a month. It offers tons of ways to support us and receive some great perks in return, including, by the way, early access to these Hot D podcast episodes. So you can check it out at patreon.com/geeksaga_entertainment.
And now it's time for the long and the short of it, our weekly episode summary.
Picture it. The Vale of Arryn, 1:15 AC. It's a foggy morning, and Lady Rhea Royce, ensconced in a brawn, runes-covered armor that her house is known for, rides out alone on a hunt, only to be confronted by a cloaked figure that turns out to be none other than her husband, in the wedded sense, if not the bedded sense, Daemon Targaryen. And then he promptly startles her horse, she is crushed under it, and he finishes the job by bashing her head in. Not cool, man. Not cool. Meanwhile, Viserys is picking his way to Driftmark, where he plans to make the marriage alliance between Rhaenyra Targaryen and Laenor Velaryon. Things don't seem to get off on the right foot when Corlys doesn't actually come out to meet the king upon his arrival. But despite a bit of banter regarding succession and last names, in the end, it seems everything is copacetic about the agreement, at least between the two fathers, as Rhaenys is understandably worried about the fact that they're putting their obviously gay son in danger by marrying him off to the supposed heir to the Iron Throne, an heir whose succession will surely be challenged, she notes. Smart woman. Really, so many people should listen to Rhaenys more. As for Rhaenyra and Laenor themselves, it might be an arrangement of pseudo-convenience, but hey, at least they know, care about, and respect each other. And after their beach stroll conversation, are on the same page regarding what they want out of their marriage, which, in case it wasn't clear, seems to be doing their duty, probably including producing an heir and a spare, but giving each other leave to pursue their own pleasures. Pleasures that probably, maybe even hopefully, involve some hot D for the both of them?
If we ignore Rhaenys' misgivings like Corlys does, everyone is happy, and this will surely go swimmingly. Except for Sir Cole of House Law, who is smitten enough with Rhaenyra to propose that they run away across the narrow sea together. Apparently, Rhaenyra had previously waxed poetic to him about her desire to just run off and be free, or something like that. And her lover is not too happy to hear that she never really meant it, and she's going to marry Laenor, but she can continue to do what she wants, and part of that is banging Kristen on the side. I mean, I would too.
Fair enough.
I mean, come on, guys. You know, like, I mean, come on. And like, okay, we get him being upset over just being her side piece, but dude, you're really only going to whine about soiling your white cloak now? Tell us, you're actually only mad because she won't do what you want her to do without telling us exactly that? Back in King's Landing, despite the fact that we just got rid of good old Gossip Otto, a new character, Larry Strong, is already gunning for that Gossip Guy title. Unfortunately, Rhaenyra, while she and Daddy were away, Larry Strong sowed some seeds of doubt in Alicent's mind by straight up telling her that the Grand Maester delivered a special tea to Rhaenyra. So now Alicent is suspicious, which leads her to summon Criston to question him about the night Rhaenyra was with Daemon. But her refusal to be blunt about whether Rhaenyra had a tryst with Daemon leads her unwillingly leading Criston to confessing that he and Rhaenyra did the thing.
While Viserys seems to be ailing even worse than ever, he gets his shit together enough to kick off Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding celebrations. But since when does a major Westerosi wedding go as planned? In this case, it's one seemingly minor thing after another, culminating in one major incident that is really just the straw that breaks the dragon's back. Namely, Alicent interrupts Viserys' speech with her entrance, clad in a green dress that signifies her true alliances. Gerald Royce and Daemon have a nasty little exchange about Rhea's death and how Daemon stands to inherit Runestone. Viserys witnesses a very obviously overly friendly exchange between Daemon and Rhaenyra. And finally, after Laenor's lover Joffrey pulls Sir Cole of House Slaw aside to have a chat about them being Laenor and Rhaenyra's extramarital paramours, Criston releases his rage on Joffrey's head. This leads to all of the upcoming wedding celebrations being canceled. Rhaenyra and Laenor are wed that night right there in the hall with the remains of the feast scattered around them, and the end of the ceremony is punctuated by Viserys collapsing. Criston Cole is also notably absent as he has stumbled off to the Godswood, where Alicent arrives just in time to stop him from taking his own life. And so in a way, we come full circle as we kick off our discussion with hot take number 1. Ugh. Rip Rhea Royce gone too soon.
Oh, gods.
I really didn't expect it to happen that quickly.
I had the assumption that she was not going to make it out of this episode because we knew that with the wedding coming up, Rhea needs to disappear at some point. And yeah, I was unfortunately not surprised that Daemon did what he did.
I wasn't surprised, right, that he did it. One of the things that we know from Fire and Blood is that she died in a hunting accident. That's what we know, right? And it was a bashed-in head.
She hit her head and she was out for 9 days before she finally passed.
Yeah, so this is a shortened version of that.
This is a shortened version of it. In the books, I was also kind of like, this is very convenient for Daemon to suddenly lose his wife that he didn't care about in the first place. And we're probably not going to see it because we're about to go into the time jump, but there is an exchange that happens between Daemon and Lady Jane Arryn in the books that makes it seem that he's very unwelcome.
Well, first of all, we see Daemon and Gerald Royce having a little tete-a-tete, but a nasty one at the opening wedding celebration. So I feel like there might be more coming because he says like he's going to go talk to Lady Jane about how he should inherit Runestone or how he's supposed to inherit Runestone. But for now, like you said, you thought that Daemon had something to do with her death just from the brief passage about it in the book. And yes, that is something that so many fans have postulated, that Daemon in some way caused it. So this was a very specific, yes, he did, at least in Showverse. But I think that this is probably one of those things that Martin was like, he probably had something to do with this being confirmed.
I mean, the second I saw him, and then when she showed up and it was like, oh, this is your wife. Like, you know, she looks cool. I got the cool ass armor, you know, riding the horse. I'm like, hell
He's
yeah.
too good
like,
for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was like one of my first like initial reactions was like, how did you wind up with her? You know, like, I mean, you are literally like trash in her eyes. I mean, come on, how did that happen? You know,
his grandma, actually.
No. So, but you know, yeah, I mean, I knew something was going to happen at that point. I was like, okay, he's gonna offer in some kind of way, or you know, do something. It really wasn't. I mean, I guess the way it happened was kind of surprising because getting crushed by a horse at first, or getting incapacitated by the horse, and then getting your head crushed in with a rock is not exactly one of my top 3 ways that I'd want to go. But I was disappointed because I thought that her character, like there's a lot to be said when they introduce a character for a very quick scene or just something like that, but everything you need to know about her character is literally said and just done just by the way that they like presented her.
Mhm.
Where I was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, she was on the screen for like 5 minutes and I felt like I already knew her character,
Yeah.
So the fact that they just kind of, like right off the bat was like, okay, like there's good storytelling. I'm not going to crap on them for that. Okay. Like I'm not disappointed.
They made
I'm
you care
just
about her
Yeah.
very
exactly.
quickly.
And you're just like, well, okay. I mean, easy come, easy go, I guess, So
It was
But-
very show don't tell, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But also I enjoyed how awesome she really was, right? Like she was pretty and badass.
very well spoken, very
Yeah.
badass, very well spoken, like just like commanded, like just power, like that is someone that I would meet and be like, okay, yes, I'm going to follow you in battle wherever you go. You don't have to say anything else. Like I'm good. Like let's do this.
And not that Damon isn't badass, but we've heard nothing but him trash talking her. So like then you meet her and it's kind of like, oh dear. It kind of makes you question like how many times has like a friend of yours been trash talking their significant other or their ex and you've met them and been like, maybe
I don't quite get it.
problem.
Or it's either like I don't, either you get the I don't get why you're doing that, or the I understand why you're doing it. It's not great.
Well, there's like in my brain, there's like 2 types of badassery, right? There's badasses and then there's noble badasses, right? The noble badasses are the ones that you die for. Those are the ones that like you just, whatever they tell you to do, you just do it because they're badasses, but they're good,
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of arranged marriages, hot take number 2, first come arrangements, then comes marriage. So real quick, I wanted to ask you guys before we discuss this a little more. Do we think Corlys knew ahead of time what Viserys was showing up to propose? Because I assumed yes, he did. There's, we might not have Varys' little birds yet, but there's still little birds and gossip autos or gossip Laris's everywhere. So
there's gossips, as well as there's also a certain level of etiquette that comes as if you're going to be making like a 2-3 day journey to Driftmark from King's Landing. There's a certain etiquette of like, I'm coming here. Here is the vague reason, like things that I want to discuss. Be ready for that. So he may have worded it in a way of like, I want to discuss a proposal. Is it like a wedding arrangement? Is it a business arrangement? Who knows? But I want to discuss something very important with you that involves both our families. And I think Corlys has been kind of vying for this type of arrangement for quite some time, that he's like, oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He's not dumb.
No, yeah, exactly. And also he did seem to have his demands ready, and there were a couple different levels to this. First, props to Viserys that he immediately was like taking a stand already that the firstborn child of Rhaenyra and Laenor would be the heir to the throne, regardless of gender.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I should have been expecting that. I, to be honest, don't remember reading anything specific about it or these the specifics of the marriage arrangement from Fire and Blood. But despite the fact that I maybe should have been expecting it, it was still really nice to hear. It was the first thing he said, first thing out of his mouth, didn't even blink an eye about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that he has to be of that mindset, because if he wasn't, if he said, okay, well, yeah, their firstborn son, then he's immediately putting into question again the succession with Rhaenyra.
Oh, yeah.
But when it came down to the brass tacks, I did kind of understand both Viserys and Corlys's back and forth about the name, because yeah, in Viserys's mind, the Targaryen name should be the one on the Iron Throne, particularly if the prophecy that they have really drilled home or let's call it knifed home to us over and over again these past several weeks. not that Corlys knows about that, but in Viserys' mind, obviously it has to be a Targaryen in name on the Iron Throne. But also, if none of the kids had the Valyrian name, Corlys only has a son and a daughter, so he would have his line would die. Not cool by Westerosi standards.
Yeah. To be fair, Corlys does have a brother, but I don't know the status of any of his children because I don't even remember if it was talked about in the books.
So. Yeah, I mean, the name would live on maybe, and I guess that's maybe the way I should have put it. The name would possibly live on through his brother's line or other family members, but it's still, and of course, there's always like some other child could take the name. I'm not going to say too much about that, but we've seen it happen in the future too. So
yeah.
But it's not the same as, and this is like a weird aside, but actually my ex, who I'm still very good friends with, his family was like obsessed with their family name not dying to the point where I felt pressured to have children because his brother certainly wasn't going to. And it was this weird, like, why do you care so much? I get that your name is this old family name and your family came over on the Mayflower and stuff, but like, aren't we living in the 21st century? But this is Westeros, so,
Okay. The names are actually, I actually don't know what my actual last name is, right? Because my dad was adopted and he didn't know his dad is all. He's a total mystery. So I actually don't even know. So we're like a family of like Jon Snows. So we just don't know right now. So maybe there'll be something exciting about that in my future, but who knows? Probably not. But yeah, I thought this scene was like really cool. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you. I really focused hard on those ships. I love boats, and I just loved the big flag on it, and all that kind of stuff. The big sail with all that kind of stupid shit. I do love that as soon as he hit land, it was just like straight to business. He kind of knew what was going on. Like, look, and with the name, like, I see what he was doing. It just seemed kind of cheap, I guess, like on his part, where it's like, oh, it has to have this name because of whatever prophecy or whatever.
Westerosi patriarchy, though.
Yeah. I think part of it has to do with just the fact that it is a dynasty, and Aegon the Conqueror had an idea, and Viserys for sure does, as much as he wants to go down in history and have his name be part in songs, I don't think he wants his name to, especially in this moment, to be like the last Targaryen king. He doesn't want to be remembered as that. He doesn't want to be remembered as the king that like passed on the line to someone else. He wants to be remembered as more similarly to Jaehaerys, who is a peacekeeper, but also had to fight some battles. He understands enough about himself to know that like he's not any sort of Aegon the Conqueror, but he at least hopes that he could be like his grandfather.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and he straight up says that later too. Mm-hmm. That he regrets that his reign has been so peaceful and everything, but he's extending this offer, which is kind of way past due olive branch after he rejected their daughter, who, by the way, not really arguing that.
I'm so happy about that.
Like, listen, Alicent was too young too, but Lena was like straight up baby, straight up Maddie. Like,
straight up baby.
I mean, listen, yes, of course they're not going to say no, but also very sure of yourself there, sir.
Yeah.
On that note, hot take number 3 is Rhaenyra x Laenor hard eyes. Sort of, right?
It's my compet shit.
Of course it sucks that that either of them can't just do what they want, be with who they want to be with. But in terms of Westerosi arranged marriages. Wow. But in terms of Westerosi arranged marriages, it seems like this one, between two people who grew up together and care for and respect each other and have an honest conversation right off the bat, has a chance to be better than most, or maybe had a chance, but we'll talk about that later too. So on that note, I really loved their whole conversation. Maybe not the food comparisons. I get why they did that. But comparing your sexual proclivities to food has never really done it for me. But their agreement and everything, it was honestly more well done than I even hoped or thought it could be. So I think they went into this with such great prospects.
Oh yeah. They like I was kind of imagining that it was going to be this unspoken sort of arrangement that like she knows Lenore is not interested in her that way. And he could probably guess that, like, oh, yeah, she's not like super upset that I'm not paying that much attention to her or attention to her in that specific way, that she may have another side piece. But to come out and be like, hey, like, we know each other. We know these things about each other. We don't have to pretend. Like, that's just going to cause more heartache down the line if we're not communicating with each other. So that was like A+ communication. For once, Rhaenyra, you have good communication skills. Please use them.
For once, in any sort of ASOIAF property, there was good communication. And I think in Fire and Blood, it's only vaguely referenced that maybe they had a conversation. And when I say vaguely referenced, I mean like you assume they must have talked about it, but
oh yeah,
it's never for sure. And it could also just be, like you said, a silent knowledge of each other and agreement.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about this. That's definitely where the show is shining in comparison to the book, because the book is just from a historian's point of view, and historians aren't, I mean, it's not like Laenor and Rhaenyra had this conversation via letters. They had this in person with no one else around. So obviously historians aren't going to know this, but through the show we get to see these conversations and the parts of Targaryen history and Westerosi history that aren't written actually happen, instead of having to guess between the lines.
That relationship's going to last forever. That's all I'm saying. I mean, they just came right on the table and it was like, look, cards on the table. This is how it is, you know? I like this, you like that. We can still get married and do the thing, you know, and then we have this. I mean, I love that. I mean, you know, I was not expecting that conversation to go like that. I was definitely expecting it to be more like a hidden behind the scenes and ooh, mystery, and like this one's with this one and that one's with that one. But all just the way they just kind of threw their cards on the table, I thought was perfect. I loved it.
One would hope, right? Like
they had the potential to last for quite some time, especially since they're both dragon riders. You definitely, it's like that. They had the potential to be a very strong union, and that's all I'll say on that. Joff, it's so nice to get, and this is for anyone that might know Micah from Twitter.
Micah of Clark,
Micah Clark on Twitter. He's such a fan of all of the minor characters. Like, this guy knows characters that are mentioned twice, maybe, and that I completely forget about them. They have no speaking lines. They are just mentioned. And it was so cool to see Joffrey Lonmouth and get to explore as little as we got of it. It was so cool to see just how well established Laenor and Joffrey is. And I think this goes back to how the showrunners were able to make us fall in love with Rhea Royce for her 5 minutes on screen.
Yeah.
You're able to fall in love with Joffrey and understand the relationship and kind of the history that Laenor and Joffrey have with each other through 10 minutes of them interacting with each other. And you're just like, oh gosh, you know what? I really hope they're actually able to make it work together, because you also hear in like the wedding scene and some of the wedding scenes that Joffrey seems to be okay with Rhaenyra, and he's like, hey, if Rhaenyra is an important figure in Laenor's life, then she's going to be an important figure in mine, and I'll do what I can to make sure that they stay safe. He's just so sweet. But yeah, I think my note was that this is the Bury Your Gays episode. One, because I had canon that Rhea Royce is definitely some sort of queer.
I don't disagree, honestly.
You look at her and you look at the way that she and Daemon interacted, and especially her being like, I know you couldn't finish. Like, she's a little eh. And if you're listening, I just did the like gay hand
So, hot take number 4. The reveal Allison wasn't expecting. Listen, it was predictable from the moment she summoned Kristen.
As soon as she called Kristen, I was like,
Yep.
This is not going to go how either of them expect.
Well, to be honest, I kind of at first I was like, okay, well maybe she's gonna straight up ask about Rhaenyra and Damon. But no, literally 30 seconds into the conversation, it was so obvious that she was, unlike good old Otto from last week, she wasn't just playing coy. She was absolutely just not wanting to say the thing, but hinting very strongly that something untoward happened that night between Rhaenyra and a man.
Yes.
And she's asking Kristen these leading questions without mentioning Damon's name. And it was obvious, like, so soon that he was going to confess. And I was just sitting there
he was ready to break.
Yeah, I was just, I will say this. I feel like he should have been sweating it more.
Oh, for sure.
I would give him like 2 out of 10 Targ eyebrows for his acting in this scene. Or maybe it was the writing, maybe it was the directing. But he was not sweating this enough because he was just sitting there like very cool, collected, and calm. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, it was me. And I was like, okay, like I expected you to confess because Allison is unwittingly leading you toward this confession by not saying the name of the person she believes Rhaenyra hooked up with. But like, you probably should have been more nervous about this literally the entire time. Even when he asks for clemency, he's just kind of like, please grant me clemency. Don't geld and torture me.
Yeah, if he went into that conversation thinking that she was talking about him, like I don't know if it's obvious for show only watchers, but there are serious ramifications for breaking the oaths of the White Cloak and the oaths of the Kingsguard. There are serious ramifications, which I think he touches on. Like, you get that, like, oh, because he broke this specific oath, he could possibly be gelded or maimed. But, like, it's very serious, and he really should have been sweating more.
Well, Dean actually was sitting next to me, and he's not read any of the books, and he was like, wait, what? They're supposed to be celibate? He didn't know. Because while you see Barristan, of course, you get some of Barristan and very vague other Kingsguard members in Game of Thrones. The only one you really know is Jaime, who's very obviously breaking that vow. So he had no idea that it was a vow that they even took. And I was like, yeah, dude, it's like the Maesters also aren't supposed to, but do all the time. The Night's Watch also aren't supposed to, but most of them still go to Molestown. Manny, did you know that that was part of their vows?
I didn't know it was part of their vows, but like the way this show is written as compared to like the other one, honestly, and then going back to like Damon's wife, like the fact that they can say so much by not saying anything at all, I think is where this show is really golden. So when I see him and, he's the White Club people or whatnot, like to me, I'm like, oh, they're paladins. Right? Like that's why I see them. They're not knights, they're paladins. So when he started saying, oh, well, I can't because I'm supposed to like not do this, like that wasn't a surprise to me because I had already gotten that vibe from them. Like Jaime Lannister was like, he was a knight, but he was like a dickhead, right? I mean, at least at first anyway, he was just kind of a dick, right? And it's just like, oh, okay, this is just some cocky ass fucking knight. But with these guys, I just instantly was drawn. When I play D&D, I always play a paladin. It's like my favorite character. It's like I instantly gravitated towards that about him, where I'm like, I know what he is. He's a paladin. She shouldn't be having sex. Because even when that happened in that episode where they had gotten together, I was already like, dude, like you're gonna pay the price for that in some way because you're not supposed to be doing. You're not some sleazy knight. You're like a protector, and that's what paladins are, and that's what you need to do. And you need to sacrifice any sense of self for you to do that.
Yeah, especially thinking in D&D terms that there's a certain oath that's taken. And those oaths come with like certain sacrifices. So, I mean, that's exactly what the Kingsguard is supposed to be. Whether they achieve that ideal or not, it depends on the person. It depends on the king at the time.
Yeah,
and
I really
and Knight Commander.
Yeah, and I really think that with how calm he was, that one didn't really. Because look, it's like when you hit that point where you're going to get executed, right? Or like when someone's like going to die, there's like that calm that happens where they're just like, you know what? They're just kind of, this is my fate. This is what as it is. And that was, to me, that was another paladin thing, right? He knew he did wrong. he has to pay the price for that. And he was ready for it and to accept it. So he was just like, this is exactly what happened. I deserve justice. Boom, do it. So honestly, with him not sweating bullets, it didn't, to me, it was at least just from like my view, maybe I'm wrong. It just felt like that's totally part of the thing. You
That
know?
he had already like accepted his fate.
Like he accepted it. He knew he did wrong. He went against his oath and he knows that he needs to die. And he's like, you know what? Yes, I absolutely deserve to die. This is what I did. I'm not worried about it because it's, righteous judgment, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say on Allison's side of things,
Oh, man.
wow, she got super upset. And I get it's because, quote, Rhaenyra lied to her, unquote.
Yeah.
But did she? Because Rhaenyra very specifically said nothing happened with Daemon. She didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I think that is all that we know as watchers. That's a lie. But
Right.
like from the context that Alicent has, she like technically doesn't know
Yeah.
what truly happened with Damon. But like it's one of those things that, because I've been in similar situations of friends or people who I thought were good friends ended up using me as a way to cover for them as they were going outside of their relationship or beyond the boundaries of their relationship with like a romantic partner, and they never specifically lied to me. They just said that they were with someone else, and but like then you're getting caught up in the lie, and it's so frustrating afterwards to be
Mhm.
like if you had just told me, I'm like I probably still would have been upset. But like it's one of these ways that like but there's also like layers of context because if my friend told me that like they went outside their relationship, I'm not a queen, so like I don't have the ability to be like, oh, that's so horrible, you're basically a traitor to the throne now. So I think there's a reason why Rhaenyra didn't tell her.
Yeah.
But
Oh, for sure.
I will say that Allison's upset because she's in love with Rhaenyra. That's why.
See, I don't. I felt from the start that it was more on Rhaenyra's end than it was on Allison's.
Mhm.
And for me, this felt more like she was kind of self-righteously angry, but more because her friend didn't tell her the truth. Her dad got removed from being hand of the king. Good riddance. Good old riddance. The good old Otto. But I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't strong feelings on Allison's part at all.
Mhm.
I just, for me, it looked like it was more on Rhaenyra's side. But also we only really saw Rhaenyra being upset about the marriage, and we
Yeah.
didn't really see much from Allison's end of things until she was trying to repair her relationship with Rhaenyra and saying like, I miss you and stuff like that. So I do not discount the fact that there are feelings on Allison's side as well.
Yeah.
And also it could be like a repressed, it could be like more of a
I think
repressed
it's a lot of repressed because
Yeah.
we see, and is kind of alluded to in this episode too, but it's been alluded in the past, that Allison is a little more religious a lot more religious than Rhaenyra. And I don't know if it's obvious enough in the show yet, but the High Towers are very powerful within the Faith of the Seven. So they have strong roots there. That's how they became as powerful as they are, by allying through the Seven with Aegon the Conqueror. So there's that deep history, whereas Rhaenyra is able to kind of be like, the faith is a thing that I have to do as a ruler of these people who follow this faith, but it's not like necessarily important to me. For Allison, it seems far more important for her. This is like actual faith. And while I don't think in the books that the faith is like openly homophobic, they definitely make it seem more anti or anti-queer and anti-LGBT within the TV series. So
Yeah.
if she grew up on that, is very religious, and is now feeling very strong emotions for her best friend, she's probably very, 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 very angry. at not just Rhaenyra, but also at herself.
I don't disagree that Allison's religion possibly affected her feelings on how she felt, basically.
So honestly, I kind of saw this one from like a different angle. Because honestly, it really didn't hit me too much that they might actually be into each other. Because like when I was younger, I had like friends, guy friends,
Mhm.
girlfriends, like, and just like whatever, right? And when one of
Yeah.
my guy friends would like get together with someone or like start hooking up with someone and that's going to be their girlfriend, like I had the same reaction to it, right?
There's
Because I was
still
like,
that, like, especially when, like, as a kid, you don't really have you haven't quite figured out those boundaries between how to balance your friendships and your romantic relationships. So when your guy friends started dating someone, they might put all their time in there, and you're like, "I miss you, dude." Like,
yeah, and
yeah.
that's what it kind of came down to, like because it was just
Mhm.
because to me it was just like it's like camaraderie, and it was just like, oh, it's us dudes hanging out, and like now one of them is
Mhm.
going to be gone, and this is like the only like guy that and there wasn't I never had like an attraction towards this guy or to one of my friends at the time. They were just like my companion. There was someone that I was with, around them all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And now that they're like gone, it's like, you kind of get mad about it, right? And then you kind of
Yeah.
like don't, like it's not even so much of just like, okay, you just get mad. So I don't know. So when I saw that scene, that's how I kind of took it. I was like, oh, you know what, like Allison got married so young to like begin with.
Oh,
This was like one of her only friends, and now it's like she's married, so she's stuck in this thing. And then now, she's gonna be going now, or now she's sleeping with this guy, and now she's just kind of pissed because now she's like, well, fuck, I don't got anything now. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? Like it
I
was
think
like my last friend.
there's also that, like, I think it's something that is kind of a universal experience that as you get older, there are childhood friends that are with me and up into my adulthood. But there's also people that, like, as we came back from college, realizing that we no longer have the same thing, like the same interests. We no longer relate to each other in the same way. But like you still want that friendship because you're like, I
Mhm.
remember how it was, and this person was very important to me, but how can I connect to you now? And just that loss of that friendship, it sucks, and it can make you very angry to be like, how you changed so much when it's fair that, like, both of you have changed, both of
Yeah.
you have grown up. But yeah, this show is hitting me so much more than the books, simply
Mhm.
by making Alicent closer in age to Rhaenyra. You get that there there's both the really intense friendship that happens between young women, and I think there's intense relationships that happen in your teens, regardless of if you're a closeted gay man or a lesbian woman. These intense relationships, and eventually you're going to grow up and part ways, and just the dealing with that and the fallout of those relationships and how difficult they are. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, well, and then, add in the fact that she married her
Yeah,
best
yeah,
friend's
your best
daughter.
friend is now your stepmom. That
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
and you have
Yeah,
to deal with that when you're like 15 years old.
yeah.
And also, I don't know any 15-year-old that's like emotionally mature enough to deal with the fact that their best friend is now their step parent. There's
No.
there's no teenager
Well, I
that's
mean, in
emotionally
this day and
No.
age, you
there
would
are
really hope that wouldn't
there
happen.
are there
Yeah.
are few adults that I also know that are emotionally capable of dealing with that. They're adding a whole new, like, dozens of layers to Alicent
Mhm.
that didn't really exist in the books, and it's going to create some issues.
Yup. Again, maybe Allison, you should communicate with Rhaenyra. Size, gestures, at lack of communication in all the things. So, Meg, did you want to talk about your hot take 4.5 about Larys Strong
Oh
versus
god.
Willis?
So it just came to me as soon as I saw him on screen this episode. I am one of these people that views Willis Tyrell, who is not shown in the TV series Game of Thrones, but he is a background, like, tertiary character in the books. mentioned only a handful of times, doesn't have any speaking lines. I view him as someone who is actually a decent person. He is actually who Marjorie and Elena Tyrell say he is. For those of you who don't know, Willis Tyrell is the eldest son of the Tyrells, and he was injured in an attorney in his youth, which gives him a bad leg. So he's essentially disabled, but he is presented in the books as a marriage option to Sansa Stark by Marjorie Tyrell and Elena. And for the most part, I believe that he is actually the person that they say he is, that he is a decent person. But there are some interpretations of his character that are very interesting, in that he could be this more calculating person, a more Tywin type figure who is okay moving people like chess pieces. And so when I saw Larys Strong on screen, I'm like, this is who Willis Tyrell could have been if he had spent more time in King's Landing, and if Elena had pushed maybe a little bit more for him to be that type of person, he could have been a Larys Strong type character. And as well, I made a Willis Tyrell costume, and it's in very similar color tones to Larys Strong. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, that could have been Willis. Matthew Needham, you could convince me could be a good Willis face. I think he could embody that character really well.
We're going to move on to hot take number 5. Sir Cole of House Law has gone off the deep end. He's added some spicy Dijon mustard to his usual mayonnaise mix. Listen, so he straight up asks Rhaenyra to run away with him, which, like, ugh, dude, come on. And I get him being angry with her for, like we said in the summary, her like just wanting him to be her side piece, but also she initiated it to an extent, but he was obviously interested. It wasn't like there was anything forceful going on there, right? And
there's 40 pounds of armor to remove. That takes time.
Yeah, and only now that she has refused to run away with him is he all schneh about soiling his white cloak. Dudes be dumb. Like, dudes be dumb. There's so much from Fire and Blood that is left open-ended, right? Mm-hmm. It is literally, we get 2 separate sides of the story.
The sentence says that Criston Cole approached Rhaenyra and wanted to run away with her, but she said no. Mushroom says that Daemon coached Rhaenyra into seducing, in how to seduce Criston Cole, and she came to Criston Cole with just the cloak on and nothing underneath.
Oh no, my white cloak.
No, yes.
No. I really like this amalgamation of those stories, right? Because it takes bits and pieces and also inserts its own portions. And, we always knew neither one of those could possibly be the entire truth, right? There was way too much. I'm not going to get into it too much, but there's way too much nastiness and anger between the two of them in the future for it to have been the simple one of them refused the other, bang, that's it. So I really, really like what they're doing with this. What I don't like is it did really seem like way too fast of an about face on Criston Cole's end, because, like, dude, come on, she is the princess. Even if she wasn't slated to be the queen, which she is, what did you really think was going to happen? And also, goddamn girl, you are that good, because, she didn't actually get taught by Daemon to do anything, right? They just had a little bit of a back and forth. Ew, gross, get this over with. I don't want to see it ever. Not going to get into that too much, but, like, for fuck's sake, what did she do to him? Does she have, like, a golden vagina or something?
No, he's just a virgin.
Yeah.
But he's so much older than her, and also, like, he was like a hedge knight and stuff. Like, really?
This is true.
You think he was a virgin?
I like to joke that he is.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, right? There's a possibility. Like, look at Dunk from Night of the Seven Kings. Dunk was never going to force himself on somebody, and I don't think Kristen Cole would either. But that also doesn't mean that if somebody came to them willingly, they wouldn't be like, "Yeah, Dunk fucks, man. So does Kristen Cole, right?"
Dunk fucks.
Sorry, that's an Ice and Firecon mock trial 2019 take.
Yeah, I think his character's like turnaround was like a bit much. I mean, I kind of like I think that like he just went way too. I mean, he let out the throttle a little too hard on it. Now him getting like obsessed with Rhaenyra. Look, the way I see it is like you have this paladin. They're like the tanks, right? Their entire life is sacrifice and sacrifice. They are shadows. That's all they are. They're in the shadows, and they die and they fight for you. They're never paid attention to. As soon as one of them dies, there's another one to come in and replace them, right? So this is like the one time that somebody paid attention to him, right? And I think that's why, at least in my brain, I'm like, okay, the guy just went off the deep end because he's like, holy shit, you mean this is what attention feels like? And maybe that's what caused him to just go over the deep end. Now, I do think they just went a little too hard on that one, where I was like, look, dude, I mean, we all get mad, but bro, like, come on. I think that was the only part where they're like, for me, there was like there was a little bit of a disconnect there, where it's like I understood what they were trying, like the story they were trying to tell, and like why he was crazy like that. Like I just saw it. I was like, you know what? I've read characters like this in the past. Like I kind of have an idea of what they're trying to portray here, like what his character is going through. But I think the fact that he just went a little too far, and then at that point it was like, bro, go kill yourself, like it's too much,
Yeah, I think this might be the one major flaw that House of the Dragon has, is that they are speeding up the timeline, or they're at least shortening the timeline between certain events. Like, we are about to go into the 10-year time skip. And so there was a lot of things that they had to hit by episode 5. And to make sure that happened, you don't get the space for things to settle in, for Kristen Cole to have that like Javert moment of, holy crap, I have done so wrong. I just need to die. I can't redeem myself. There's no time for him to sit within those emotions and just go off the rails.
But also, he's so dramatic. I'm sorry, but he's just such a whiny. He's kind of a fuckboy in this episode.
I know Catholic boys that are like this. Catholic boys that go into seminary that are very like this.
That's what I was going to say. Is like maybe he was a paladin at a young age. They just had him in there at a young age, and he doesn't really know any better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say like Catholic boy, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're absolutely right about that. Like that's exactly what's going on there. Yeah.
And then also, of course, the big thing is not only does he freak out very suddenly about the fact that he soil feels like clothes, but then they're at the opening wedding celebration, and Joffrey Lonmouth comes up to him, and he's not being questionable or anything. He is literally like, hey, my dude, you love her, I love him. We both have to be there for these people that we care about and protect them.
He was making sure they were on the same page and made the worst mistake of his life.
Yeah.
It was so awful because, like that's what I was saying. Like, Joffrey cares. He cares so much about Laenor, and because Rhaenyra is going to be important to Laenor in the future, he's like, I'm going to make sure that this relationship, that they publicly can be safe, so that like I can still have my relationship. And probably he would, if things were allowed to be nice for once in Westeros, he and Rhaenyra probably would have been friends in the future. But he made the worst mistake of talking to a paladin with immense amount of Catholic guilt, who doesn't know how to regulate his emotions.
Yeah.
And because like he was like, let's be on the same page. They're going to need defenders. We're going to defend them. And Unfortunately, Kristen's definition of defending Rhaenyra involves taking out certain other people.
I don't even think he was defending Rhaenyra. I think he flipped his shit
Yeah, I think it was just rage. Yeah.
Oh,
like
for sure.
about not even defending Rhaenyra. He was just so rage monster.
And like taking out someone, like, you knife him in the back, you hit him with an arrow to distance. This was not taking someone out. This was
No.
like steamrolling somebody. I mean, this was like pure rage and hate.
And it
You know,
happened
like-
so weirdly because Joffrey talked to him and then left. And
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
like people were dancing, and we
Cleo.
went back and watched that whole entire scene and paused it several times. Like, okay, where are they now? Where are they now? Where are
Yeah.
they now? And no matter what we did, we could not figure out how it got from point A to point B.
I would almost think that Daemon and Rhaenyra were not being subtle during the dance.
No.
Unfortunately, when you have platinum blonde hair among a sea of dark-haired people, you're really noticeable. So my guess would be that Kristen saw that, because we see that Viserys is watching that too, and he's getting very upset. That if Kristen saw that, then he can't punch the prince. He can't punch Daemon. He can't take out Daemon, and he certainly can't take out Laenor, but he can take out Joffrey. And that was his target. That was the only target he had at the moment.
And he
That
really
was-
took him out. That was gross.
Oh, it
That
was
was pretty
so
gross.
awful.
I mean, Dean
So
worked
awful.
in film for a long time, and he didn't do makeup himself, but he saw a lot of like horror film type makeup and stuff like that, and he was like, "Wow, that's really good." Like, I don't even know if that's makeup. That's like really good. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to watch it again.
I don't need to
The
watch
fir-
it
like,
again.
I already saw it once. And so like as soon as it came up, as we were like going through that scene, I'm like putting my hands up, like, nope, don't need to see that again.
I knew no one was going to be able to save him, but I kept waiting for like Laenor to either get up or even Harwin to get there and knock some sense into Kristen. I was waiting for the Knight Commander to come in and be like, knock it off. You need, like, pull Kristen out by his scruff and be like, you need to stop this. And
Kristen
this is
straight up slugged Laenor. Nobody did anything.
No, I can
is
understand
so
that
weird.
the regular nobility can't do anything, because what are you going to do against a guy in plate mail? But like the fact that no other Kingsguard came in to either crowd control, because the princess is getting knocked down. Harwin Strong, he ran in and stole our hearts. That's fine. They had to like point to Harwin and be like, go get her, because no other Kingsguard is doing anything. For me, it was one of those like, I know that Joffrey's going to die, because unfortunately I've read the book. But I was like, oh, please, someone step up. And no one did. And it was just very sad.
Yeah.
Did you think that Joff was going to die, Manny? Or were
No,
you-
that one kind of got me by surprise, actually, like that, because I feel like he was tackling it the same way that Rhaenyra and the dude was, like, hey, just throw the cards on the table, like if I was in that position and the guy just came up to me and was like, hey, man, this is how it is, this is what we got to do, I'd be like, all right, cool, man, that's awesome that you're so upfront, so that way there isn't any kind of like weird, like, well, what are you doing kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hey, cards on the table, like, I think that's great. They're both each other's counterparts. I think at that point,
But he
this-
also didn't know the other part of the backstory. But
Yeah.
still,
it's just a bit much. I honestly think that, what, it's true. It's like the Catholic guilt thing, right? Like he's a paladin, he's done wrong things, right? Like he's just doing these wrong things now all of a sudden. And now he sees more wrong around him. And he's like, oh my God, I have to overcompensate because of the wrong that I did, And that's like, that's how that whole thing goes. I got to hide behind everyone else's problems to hide my own, So he just went off his fucking rocker, man.
there's a book series that I absolutely love that, weirdly enough, we're actually about to start covering on my Sagas and Sass webcast, called Red Rising. It's the Red Rising saga. And in the saga, it's a character, but it's really a position called the Rage Knight. And all I could think of when I saw Kristen doing what he was doing in this episode was the
perfect.
Rage Knight from the Red Rising saga. On that note, hot take number 6. Hear ye, all further wedding celebrations are canceled. It's time for a shotgun wedding, y'all. So, what with the drama, all the drama from the wedding celebration kickoff, and Viserys is clearly failing help because he's like bleeding out the nose during the whole fight scene. they just go ahead and seal the deal between Rhaenyra and Laenor. I mean, immediately, like we said in the summary, it's like they're
so
in that hall with the remains of the feast all over the tables around them. I wasn't expecting it to be quite that quick, but you know,
I thought they would have at least gotten to a sept. Like,
yeah, no,
the story, or like the sept. Well, it wouldn't be the sept of Baylor yet, but like, there's a sept nearby. They can go outside.
Yeah, there's a sept in the Red Keep.
Yeah, like
So-
you couldn't get there. You couldn't just like you had to do it in front of the feast. All right.
Right where Laenor's lover died. There's a rat that comes up and is like, beep, beep,
Yeah.
And also poor Laenor literally just saw his lover die, and he's sitting there like wiping blood from his nose, promising his life to Rhaenyra. He also knows, right? Because Joffrey told him before he went and talked to Kristen.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, like 0 out of 10 Targ eyebrows for poor Laenor having to go through with this wedding right after his, now wife's lover that he knows about murdered his lover. And I don't know if I can't remember. I will say I can't remember if he saw the two of them talking.
I don't recall.
But even if he didn't see them, there's no way he's not coming out of this with like how the fuck did this happen? And also, how is nobody questioning this?
The fact that Sir Kristen is able to just walk away, it's part of that Westerosi justice. The fact the Kingsguard are supposed to be untouchable because they're supposed to be so honorable. So there's probably that like, oh, he must have done something for Sir Kristen to have done that. But God, it's so awful. And you can see on Rhaenyra's face too that she knows she's also feeling terrible. She cares about Laenor, and she understood that like this guy meant everything to you.
Yep.
And now he's dead. I might be to blame.
And also just, side note, maybe, probably, definitely, the Grand Maester should listen to Maester Orwyle about those herbal poultices, because clearly leeches aren't working that well, and trying something new would be better. Because like earlier, it was kind of just like a shrug off sort of thing. It was actually almost one of my hot takes. But I watched the episode again. I was like, no, nope. I have better things to talk about. But Viserys literally collapses at the end of this.
Yeah.
And Dean, who again has not read the books, was like, wait, did he just die? Like, did they get married? Yeah. Did they have this shotgun wedding because he was about to die? And I was like, he shouldn't be dead yet. Manny, what about you? Like, what were your thoughts on the sudden wedding?
I did not like it. I thought it was gross. It's like, dude, like someone just died over there, now we're going to get married like right here. Like we can literally just, like we can go to the public toilet and it's going to be cleaner than these floors down here, as opposed to just like seriously, like, bro, there's a rat sipping on the blood over there, like that's not a good omen. That's not a good way to open up your like marriage. Like, yeah, we were at some crazy party and then we were going to get married and my knight just bashed this other dude's face until it turned into like spaghetti. And then we decided, hey, let's just get married right now, right here.
And I just had spaghetti for dinner last night. Why are you doing this to me?
But yeah, so to me, it was like, I felt like the end of that episode was, I don't know if they were just trying to rush it. I feel like some things in this show, I want to say this show is doing so many really good things and they're doing it so right. But I feel like every now and then, some of their scene transitions are really weird and kind of quick and just kind of like off base, where it's like, oh, okay, so they're just going to get married. I got a great idea. Why don't you go back over there where the blood is and you can go consummate the marriage, while you're at it.
I had obviously my HBO Max player up, so I could see how much time there was left. So like I knew that they weren't going to end it where I thought they would, but like Kristen looking up and everyone in the dance hall and the mess hall just freezing, and Laenor crying and crawling over to Joffrey could have been a great place to end that episode.
Yeah,
like you are getting to this place where the horror is setting in. But yeah, I think it's just, from my understanding, is that they weren't entirely sure they were ever going to get a season 2. It wasn't 100% a guarantee, so they wanted to try and fit in as much as they could within season 1 and try and tell as much of the story as they could. So that's where like that is coming back to bite him in the ass, because you don't get to sit with the story as much.
Well, I mean, and I also think that it probably would have been awkward for them to cut it off there. They could have, I guess, just skipped the wedding entirely, but then we'd be led to believe that they had a whole week's worth of wedding celebrations after this just absolutely horrific situation that happened. And I will say, this is kind of like an aside. It's only indirectly related to this hot take, but Kristen going off to the Godswood. And again, Dean, who hasn't read the books, was like, no, man, don't do it. Don't kill yourself. Don't do it. And
like, please do.
But where the fuck, like, what is the timeline of this? Because
I have no clue.
Like, they're showing it kind of interspersed with each other, and it's like Allison is at the wedding, and then she's at the Godswood right before he is about to stab himself in the stomach. Which also, dude, what are you doing? That is not the sign of somebody who really wants to end their own life, right? Like, that is a painful, long death, stabbing yourself in the gut.
Yep.
Which he might feel that he deserves, but
I suppose.
Who knows?
But Allison is at the wedding and then shows up to stop him from doing this. And also, how did she know? And I have a lot of questions about the end of the episode in terms of that, but
I have a theory that she's probably keeping her eye out on him now. Ever since he told her that he slept with Rhaenyra, that she's been keeping an eye out on him to see like what is absolutely, because she no longer trusts Rhaenyra after that. Rhaenyra is going to notice if someone's spying on her, because she is now highly aware, especially after what happened with Otto. But I could probably keep an eye out on Kristen, and because he's so distraught that no one's going to notice, and he won't even notice.
I mean, 10 out of 10 Targ eyebrows for Allison's timing there.
Yeah, he's going to latch onto her like she is the Virgin Mary.
Oh, Lord.
But also that green dress.
Yeah. We'll get into that, because hot take number 7 is the costumes, of course. And we've touched on some things, Daemon's armor particularly in the first episode, but we haven't really talked too much about the costumes. But with Meghan being our costume aficionado, and I say that in the most serious way possible, you are a cosplayer, but you also went to school for...
I went to school for fashion design, and I make historical costumes as my profession.
For a museum, correct?
Yes, for a historical museum.
So we simply have to give these their own hot take this week. Maybe kind of finally, not just because of, Meghan being our guest, but also because, first of all, Rhea's armor, bronze, moons. I love it.
It was so beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
I already have a couple of friends that are like considering putting it into their cosplay lineup.
Like I don't care. Like they don't care that she had 5 minutes on screen. They're like, bitch is badass. I want this armor.
We might see at least one Rhea Royce at Ice and Fire Con.
I've got my fingers crossed. If I don't see at least one Rhea Royce to fawn over.
Talking to a couple of the cosplayers, I'm like, I think there's going to be at least one. It was so beautiful. I was in awe.
Again, even Dean, who hasn't read the books and has no idea about the Royce armor and how it's supposed to look, was like, oh, that is some kick-ass armor. So Manny, what were your thoughts on it, not knowing the character at all or knowing the house really at all, because they barely introduced them in Game of Thrones? I mean,
I loved it. I'm completely on board with it. I hate that it was so short, because like I said, there's like, it's just good writing, man, when you can just bring something up, and the way they presented it, and like the armor and the clothes and like all this stuff, and it was just so perfect, and it was like, Jenna was just gone.
And also, she was super pretty. Damon's constantly talking shit about her in a way that makes her sound like she's ugly, and I was like,
so pretty.
And I was surprised when they opened up and it introduced herself, and I was like, this is the ugly one you're talking about? Like, it's not ugly. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
this is a bronze bitch. Like, she's fucking gorgeous. Like, what are you talking about?
I would literally throw myself at her feet and be like, please take me.
I would do anything for her.
But you already mentioned briefly Alicent, the green dress, symbolism, etc. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure I love the cut of the gown. That's like a personal preference. I get that they were trying to show her being confident in herself and who she really is, what she wants. It being, her shoulders. She's had her shoulders bare quite a bit in the show. But it was the bare shoulders and also the low slit with the cleavage in the middle and very, very, very green. And of course, the obvious explanation of what's the color that the high towers light their beacons when they're calling people to war? Oh, it's green?
I love that it's Laris that gives us that information.
To Harwin, by the way, who later saves Rhaenyra.
But it's also Harwin is like looking on, like he knows. He knows too.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was so good. For me, what I really love about that dress is it's very reminiscent of actual medieval dresses. We can see that in tapestries like the Lady and the Unicorn, some of the Bayeux tapestries. It's a very popular cut of a dress from like the 11th and 12th centuries. So when I saw that, I was like, because that's kind of where I was in Game of Thrones. I was like, oh wow, I wish they went a little bit more into some of the weird fashions from history as actual inspiration for a show that is supposed to be medieval fantasy. The clothing is not very medieval. So to see that, I was like, oh, beautiful, love it. And just feeds into the theory that Alicent is like a Sansa AU, basically, because that green fabric is very similar to her Blackwater dress fabric, which is something I did notice. For me, it was very fun to see that dress. It is definitely on my potential. I have like so many Alicent dresses on my potential cosplay list. Every time it comes on screen, I either have to keep it on the list or take it off. So we're gonna see how much actually stays on, and then I'll have to narrow it down. But
I think you have to get through the end of the season.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's like some of her adult dresses where I'm like, that green dress has a place on the possibility list.
I also think it was just, again, it was so powerful that she walked in the middle of Viserys' speech and he lost his shit.
That is the Alicent that I was expecting from the show. When they first said that they're going to be doing this show, I was like, oh gosh, cannot wait to hate on Alicent. Cannot wait for this Cersei character. And then they started making me love her. And now that she came and did this, and I'm like, there's the Alicent I've been waiting for.
Yeah. She was very much good old Otto's daughter in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is Alicent she is making We Are Not the Same anymore.
No, I can definitely see that. I really liked that scene, and I already knew something was up when she walked in wearing it. I was like, oh, okay. I'm familiar with gang violence. I know what's going on here. I know what's happening.
It's interesting for me to see her go to green because when we first meet her, she's in her blues. She wears one of her mother's dresses that's also blue. And then after she's married, she quickly goes to my friend and I have been calling it not quite Targaryen red. She's trying to emulate the Targaryens, but anytime she's wearing red, you can tell that it's like a shade or two off from the reds of the rest of the actual Targaryen family, which has been so interesting. And so for her to go from the red color to green, which is the opposite color on the color wheel, and in color theory, those two are opposite colors, is just, it was very delicious to see. In contrast to like Rhaenyra's wedding dress.
Which wasn't supposed to necessarily be her wedding dress, but I was very meh about what she was wearing.
I think the hairstyle is what threw me off. The dress itself is a very pretty dress, but the hairstyle was kind of, again, going into like some of the weirdness of how early fashion could have been. And I was like, so I appreciate that, but I'm like, especially after we're used to 10 years of Game of Thrones, hair down, very curly styles, to have a lot of more updos is taking a lot of getting used to. And I think that the hairstyle and that was a miss. The style of the wedding dress is very much one of those, like, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely very a Targaryen dress. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I get that it was supposed to be just the intro dress for her wedding week, because apparently that's
Mhm.
a thing that exists, but at the same time, it's like, oh, but you're a queen. You should have started out stronger than this.
Probably. Although nothing can compare to the Valerians all coming in as one, all decked out in like that gold. And I swear it's not black because I'm seeing some other photos and some like better quality stills. And like it's like a very dark teal green, which is very interesting to see that, especially when tied to the Valerians. Unfortunately for the Targaryens, the Valerians are very rich right now. So they're just going to keep showing up and showing out. And God, Lena and Laenor are they are two pieces of the pod, just looking absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. It's really fun to see the ruffles and the off the shoulder moment repeated for Lena. I love that it's just a continuous motif for her.
Her wig looked a lot better too.
Oh yeah, they're getting better. I think part of it is that like it's just hard to get wigs on children sometimes.
Yeah, it literally looked like they just plopped a giant thing on her head for the earlier episodes. So
doing dressing for like local theater, it's just very difficult to get kids into wigs. Laenor and Joffrey being these like opposite but complementary outfits with just like the sadness sort of in looks, but also breaking my heart. There was a lot of good costume moments.
I loved Rhaenys' just tunic.
That was so good.
Tunic and pants. That was the first time I've seen something in this show where I was like, I want to cosplay that.
This is going to be like a main cosplay episode. I'm putting bets down that like we're going to see a lot of that Rhaenys outfit. We're going to see a lot of Rhaenyra's wedding dress or her coat. And we're going to see a lot of Alicent in that green dress.
Yeah.
That's my prediction for like the next 5 years.
I'm just like, I am comfort plus right now when it comes to cosplay. And I saw that and I was like, I mean, I don't think I want to do like makeup to make myself look 20 years older, and also her hair wasn't terrible in this episode, but she still got that weird thing on the back of her head with her hair that I'm like, oh, I don't know about that.
She's got to bump it on.
Actually, yeah, the bump it, yeah. God, what year was the bump it popular? Like circa like 2003 or something.
Do you want to hate me? It was when I was in middle school.
Oh God.
Oh Jesus.
Manny and I, the old folk, are
Yes.
This is going to be the main cosplay episode for like the young kids, and then I have some thoughts on where I think the next cosplay episode is going to be for the adults. This has a lot of outfits that are going to be very popular for at least the next couple of years.
I agree with that completely.
See how that comes out.
It was a good episode because it really did showcase like the craftsmanship, and I really like that they did focus on it. Because I think that's one thing that they just kind of like. I wouldn't even say that they kind of blew by because they have been doing a good job. I just think this show has done such a good job in capturing my attention that I don't pay attention to details like that.
Mm-hmm.
As with like Game of Thrones, there was like there was a lot of episodes that I'm like, meh, okay. But like I paid attention to like the random things like, wow, that guy's got a great scarf. I want that scarf. But in this one, a lot of that stuff just kind of flew over my head this time around because the story and the characters and everything was really drawing me in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Last but not least, we had to start this last week. Honorable mention for a hot take is we got a new location, Driftmark, and we got to see the Driftwood Throne. Mm-hmm. Dean said Driftmark looked dreary. And I guess he's not totally wrong, but I loved it.
It's great, especially in comparison to the Court of House Manderley that I can't for the life of me think of their seat name. Granted, this is like they were introduced in like season 6 or something. So it was very dreary by that time. So it like in comparison to another like water-based house, I'm like, Driftmark is pretty open and pretty sunny.
I will say the Driftwood Throne, I was a little bit disappointed in it. Like, that's the throne that was rumored to be given to the Valyrians by the Merlin King. I feel like they went Game of Thrones with this throne when they should have gone House of the Dragon with this throne. There were too many nails. It should have been more wild. Driftwood, when it's like really softened by the water and stuff, can be very colorful and misshapen and gorgeous. And I feel like they didn't capture that. And I'm a little bit
I would have
disappointed.
wanted more like that natural look instead of a carved look.
They're like nailed together, like.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, if you haven't read the books and you don't know that this is a throne that was supposedly gifted to them by the Merlin King, and I know that's like a rumor, whatever, but still, there's a look to it that would have portrayed it being gifted to them by the Merlin King, who may or may not exist. So,
yeah.
Well, they should have just been more clear with it. They're like, hey, you want to know something that's cool about this throne? What's that? You're not going to get leprosy from it. Check it out. It doesn't look as good, but it's not going to kill you from some infection. All right?
You're not going to get MRSA from it.
Exactly. No MRSA here.
Oh no.
It's not bitey. It's not bitey.
It's not bitey.
You might get some slivers from it.
Slivers. What's a little lockjaw? I mean, it's better than, than the leprosy. So, don't worry about it.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so it's time finally for our favorites roundup. So, Manny, you go first. What was your favorite thing from this episode?
I really don't know with this episode because they did so many things good. But again, this was one of those episodes where it's like they had a peak in it with Sir Cole of Slaw, but I feel like that was like too much. I really feel like that was just like, it's cool, but when you let out the throttle too much, I mean, you're just going to destroy the engine, so it was one of those things where it's like, because like the first part with like Damon, and his terribly ugly wife, so hideous. I felt like the setup for that alone was probably like my favorite scene, just because it was so quiet, and it was just very simple, and it was like, okay. And the fact that you can introduce a character and have her on there for 5 minutes, and I knew exactly what I needed to know about her character, and like I loved her, and I was just like, dude, I need more of this character. So that scene was honestly probably my favorite. Just it was like, in the beginning, and it was just like, okay, cool. And I know that there isn't much about it. Maybe I should have a more exciting scene.
No, it was a good scene.
But it was really awesome, and just the way it was like, I mean, this show, what it's doing so good is like that. What's that saying? The brevity of wit. What is that? You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
that,
I
right?
know what you're talking about, but
yeah. And it's just like, it's just doing so much with so little. And I felt like that first scene was fantastic, right? Nothing was going on. There wasn't like a big argument of words. It was just real quick. And this is what happened. And I was like, okay. And it was the same thing with the scene with the crab feeder, right? There was no fight scene. They just dragged his dead body out of the damn thing. And I was like, dude, you didn't do anything with that. It was so simple. And it's like, that's how you write. That's how scenes stick in your head forever, is like that. And that's where I think this show is like really just tearing it up awesome wise. But that's probably my favorite scene.
Honestly, for me, it's Rhea. There was a lot of good stuff in this episode, but for me, it was the very beginning. And honestly, just thinking that we would get not episodes of Rhea Royce, but like I said earlier, the show don't tell. They showed.
Yep.
She's beautiful. She's badass. She's got great armor. She's a great rider. She loves to hunt. Like, I bow at Rhea Royce's feet.
Yes.
Please take me as your lover.
And they're doing it great, right? Because the story we're going to tell in our heads about the character is going to be so much better than anything else they're ever going to possibly write. And that's where I'm just like, I thank them. Like, great.
100 fan fiction writers just started writing a
shot.
Oh yeah, that was a really good scene. I think for me, this is where my Alicent apologist is coming out, of just her entering into the grand hall with the purposefully interrupting her husband, and as well as calling Rhaenyra stepdaughter, which I think is the first time she's referred to Alicent as Rhaenyra as her stepdaughter, like out loud, in the show. It was so good. This is the Alicent that book readers know.
Yeah.
And like you're now getting that, and you're like, you've got me hooked. Unfortunately, you're dragging me kicking and screaming to the greens, but you are dragging me. And it was just so good. A great way to say goodbye to the young actors and usher in the adult actors. It's going to be amazing.
Really interested to see that transition for next week, honestly. Because we weren't entirely sure. I kind of always thought it was going to be 5 and 5, but I was like, I don't know, maybe not. They kept doing time skips, but also not a lot was happening. So I was like, maybe it'll be longer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, very, very, very interested to see the time skip.
I can't wait for it to break my already broken heart into more pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in this now, man. I really look, before you invited me on this podcast, I wasn't even sure that I was going to watch the show, because I was like, I don't really know anything about it. And, and I'm just like, in the last season of Game of Thrones, I really wasn't. Actually, it wasn't even. I know everyone hates the last season, but in all honesty, I was clocked out for 2 seasons prior. Right?
A lot of people were. You're not alone there.
I was just like, you know what, dude? They never told me what happened to Syrio Forel, who was my favorite character of all time on Game of Thrones, And it's like I took martial arts from a guy that looked like him and acted exactly like him, so I was instantly in love with the guy. Never found out what happened with him. So I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah, and then so the last few seasons of Game of Thrones, I watched it literally just out of obligation because I wanted to see what happened. I was like, look, I just want, I made it this far. I just want to see how it ends at this point. It's to me, it's like going to an autopsy. I know it's dead, but I want to see what killed it. And that's how it was for me. Now, looking back in retrospect, I don't hate it as much as I used to. Honestly, going back and watching it, I'm like, okay, I can see how I was disappointed. Yeah, but it was okay, this writing is a little hokey, but is it really that bad? I mean, it's look, and in the end, I didn't lose any money because I didn't make the show. I don't care. And you know what though? But maybe it's because I never read the books, so I didn't have that huge attachment of this is the way. And I know, God bless your hearts, you're still waiting for the last book or something that is never going to happen.
Two more.
Oh, 2 more. Okay, so you're waiting for 2 more. And to me, I'm clocked out already. I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm going home. You guys enjoy. Honestly, I went back and I didn't mind it so much, but I was clocked out for those 2 seasons. And the way watching, House of the D now is it's making me feel or just reminding me of what I loved about Game of Thrones when I first started watching it, and in a lot of ways, I feel like it's doing some things better, just in doing the very minimalistic, but big storytelling by just using little things, and honestly, I'm totally in it, man. I didn't think that I would get into it, and I thought, well, I'll just watch it and just analyze it like a normal person, but I'm totally into it now, where I'm I mean, dude, yeah, man, my brain is just going. I mean, when we did the episode about the crab feeder getting dragged out, and I'm just no, there was no fight. It was just one swing. My brain is just working overtime on it, I love it. I'm in it. When I saw that scene, I was like, this is one of the best shows I've watched in a long time, because I was expecting the same thing. It was going to be some dramatic fight scene and all this stuff. And no, he just dragged his body out. And I was like, I love this show. This is fantastic. So good.
As we close out this episode, I just want to give a shout out to our heroes tier patron, Tommy of the TKOK Podcast Network. Thank you so much for supporting us. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for Hot D Takes. Manny and I will be back next week with a new guest to cover House of the Dragon's 6th episode, The Princess and the Queen.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Saga Podcast. If you like what you heard, please check out other Geek Saga entertainment endeavors, including the Sagas and Sass webcast and podcast and Ice and Fire Con.